Welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management, a weekly conversation with area leaders about how to persevere during uncertain times. Now here's your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times. And you can't talk about leadership without talking about some of the things our country does in the military. And one of those that is right next door, and we drive by it many times during the day. I happen to fly over it today. Is Fort Riley, Kansas, and the fort that goes in to the big red one, all those things we hear about. I have on our program today the Fort Riley Garrison commander, Col Michael Foote. And Michael, good to have you with us here.
Thanks, Gary. Super excited to be on the show and just honored to be able to represent Fort Riley today.
Now, do I need to call you Colonel or Michael, or what's best?
Michael is just fine.
All right. Well, Michael, tell me how you ended up in Fort Riley.
Well, so it was a long way to get here, but as a soldier, I got commissioned into the Army straight out of college, and then started moving out to see the world. We went to started out in Oklahoma, then went to North Carolina, and have been on both coasts, including Alaska. And for my brigade command, I was lucky enough to be chosen to command Fort Riley as a garrison commander, which is kind of a peculiar job in the Army. And really the way it translates over to the civilian world is really you're the city manager of everything that goes on the city of the post that you're assigned to.
And it's no small city, because one of the things I think Kansans understand but maybe don't realize the magnitude is the amount of financial viability that brings to our state.
Yes, huge impact. People-wise, we have just shy of 15,000 soldiers. We have about 16,000 spouses and dependents that are tied to that. Then I have my Department of Army civilians that come in. So we have a pretty significant population. The funding that comes with that is where we really see a big impact. So last year alone, we brought in about $1.9 billion to Kansas and the Flint Hills. That's everything from payroll to construction projects to just anything that comes in here. And a lot of it also is veteran support and medical support to that. So as we have an amazing hospital here on post, it just doesn't have all the capabilities that everybody needs. And so we do reach out into the local communities. And when we do that, that's additional funding that flows outside of our gates and into the local.
So a garrison commander takes care of all of those things, from hospital to helicopters, basically.
Yes, sir. So it's interesting. So I do the front gates, I do the child care centers, I do the utilities. We have the airfield, we run all the ranges, and the hospital. So they do have a hospital commander. But he works on the inside of that hospital, and then I work to keep the customers out and make sure they've got access to get there.
Many of our listeners and viewers will drive interstate and see the helicopters that are setting out. It can be an impressive array of helicopters. Where do you keep all those things when they're not setting out on your hangar there? Are they inside? Do they fly away? It seems like right now there's a lot of open tarmac out there.
So right now there is a lot of open tarmac. So our Combat Aviation Brigade is forward deployed to Europe. They are over on the eastern side of Europe, from the north to the south part, over there with all our partner nations, working to make sure that NATO is stronger and that we are protecting America's interests in Europe.
When you get that, I say, call, that has to create quite a bit of confusion isn't the right word, but the process gets started to get all the people and all that. What's the magnitude of that?
It's a significant lift for the post. The good news is we're very practiced at it. So last year, the post, we got back, we had sent the 1st Infantry Division headquarters to Europe. They were over there for about 9 months. Parts of them were over there for much longer than that. We had the 1st Brigade that was over there, and they came home last year. And then 2nd Brigade also had gone forward at a different timeline, and then they came home. And so pushing them over and then getting them back is just something Fort Riley's really good at. Everybody else that's not in Kansas and not at Fort Riley says, man, you all are in the middle of nowhere. We like to say we're in the middle of everything. because if you're on one coast, that puts you that much further from the other. And so we're able to load up our soldiers and their equipment and get them to a port to move anywhere in the world very rapidly. And that power projection makes us a very valuable asset to the U.S. military.
What else happens on the fort? We see the helicopters. Growing up as a kid, I saw some of the, I'll say the tanks and the results, the artillery fire and that sort of thing. What all gets done at the fort on a typical day when people aren't moving in and out?
So we're always training. So when our big focus is readiness and lethality to be able to go fight and win the nation's wars. So that the airfield being by the highway gets a lot of oversight and people see them move. What you don't see on the more backside of the base is all those tanks, our artillery pieces, and our infantry fighting vehicles, the Bradleys, going out to our 90,000 acres of training area and making the booms that you were talking about earlier. And that's those infantry tasks, working those ranges and increasing that lethality out there.
In the workforce in general, it's hard to find people. How has recruitment been for the Army?
Recruiting is challenging for us. We have not met our goals for the last couple of years, and it is creating a stress on the force. What we are seeing, though, is the public is gaining interest in it and is supportive of military service. What I would say, if anybody's listening, is it is a job, and it does come with challenges like they all do. The benefit of it is it does create some predictability in there. And if you're a young, I'll say 18 to 25-year-old, signing up for 3 or 4 years to go get leadership experience sounds like a really long time. When you get more gray in your hair, like you and I have, 3 or 4 years doesn't sound like that much time. And so it's a great opportunity, though, for a young person to serve their nation, a cause greater than themselves, to get that leadership experience. And after a few years, you walk away with a full GI Bill so that you have the opportunity to get college paid for after that. Or if you choose to continue to serve, there's all kinds of opportunities to do so.
Well, I know because we have some business in that area as well. A lot of once you serve, there's a chance to transition. How does that process work? Because that may be that, the military, the Army in general, is a great training background, and we have found that. How do you transition? What do you do to help people transition back? Once they get in, what happens after they decide maybe I don't want to stay in as a career?
So we have a fabulous program that's available. We've really been working on it as a military and as an Army for the last several years. We call it our TAP program, the Transition Assistance Program, and it's designed to help whether you're a first-term soldier coming to the end of your 3-year contract or whether you're ending a 30-year career. How do I start making that transition to turn back into a civilian? And what are the skills that I gained during my service? How does that translate? Where am I going to be able to go get the most bang for my buck as I start that job search? So that's a program that we try to start at about 18 months before they come off our rolls. And it allows us to get some employers that come on post to help recruit. And then we also have some individuals on my team that help. Hey, how do you write a resume? What do I need to say? If I was an artilleryman, how do I translate that into the civilian world where there are no artillerymen? But you can talk about the leadership. You can talk about the organizational skills. You can talk about the things that employers are looking for. And also say, hey, I'm trainable. I didn't know anything about helicopters before I joined. 36 months later, I'm a helicopter mechanic. How do I transition and take that into the civilian world to be successful?
You think about that when you fly or drive by. You have all those helicopters. Someone has to keep those things running because when you're up doing all the training, which you do continually, you're out, you're back, you're out, you're back, you're doing that. That becomes a whole job career in itself because of not only the technology involved, but the ability to learn how to fix something. That's a cool area to get into.
Absolutely it is. And that's one that transitions really well. Once you get into kind of that aerospace and aviation industry, that's an easy one to transition. The other thing is a lot of people think about military service and they think about a guy with a big backpack holding a rifle or driving that big tank or flying that Apache helicopter. But there's so much more. I need x-ray techs. I need dental assistants. I need supply sergeants that can come in and run and keep quantities of supplies on hands and try to be predictive so that they know when that guy with that rifle comes back to get stuff, they know what he's looking for and they can kind of anticipate that. So we've got tons of jobs that do really anything that you could think you want to do, probably some things you haven't even thought about doing, and the Army provides that.
Well, I'm excited. I want to come back and maybe talk a little bit more about how people can connect that way. But those of us in business talk about challenge in challenging times and leadership, what goes into that. Part of that is figuring out what to do next and how do you figure out what's going to happen, a strategic plan. I want to talk to you a little bit about that in Fort Riley. Our guest today is Colonel Michael Foote, who is the Fort Riley Garrison Commander. Back with more after this.
The most successful investors are those that can keep their emotions in check and take a longer-term view at what portfolios will be worth 3 to 5 years down the road. I'd say that's the most important in determining what investor outcomes are. Market corrections will continue in the future. We've seen many of them over the years, only to see equity prices rise higher, and that'll be the case in the future.
Worth Wealth Management, enhancing lives and strengthening families.
Back again here on Forward Ever, brought to you by Worth Wealth Management. It's good to have you along on our program. Interesting topic because we drive by, we see Fort Riley, but we have with us on our program the Fort Riley Garrison Commander. That's the name for the guy that runs the show over in Fort Riley. It's Colonel Michael Foote. And Michael, it's good to have you here and be talking about what you're doing. We left going into the break talking about the challenges of planning all the things that go on. You mentioned all the career opportunities, the jobs that are there, the city in and of itself that has to run. How do you sit down and get that plan in place with people going in and out to make that 3-year, 5-year plan?
So we are constantly assessing and trying to read the tea leaves or the magic 8 ball of what the future holds. And that is one of those true leader challenges of how do I get out of today and what I'm doing, and then where do I want to be in the future? We do a lot of planning, and it's everything from our infrastructure, as we know we're going to grow a little bit and change. How do we bring in electricity, water, and do those utility pieces, to also to our housing? We're constantly balancing. Do we have enough housing? Do we have the right kind of housing to make sure that our soldiers and families are taken care of? And we are always working through that process. Right now, we are working through our 5-year strategic plan. So we're looking at what does Fort Riley 2030 look like, and we're going to get that wrapped up in the next couple of months, just to give us that target in the future that we've got something to work forward to.
One of the things that goes into the whole program at Fort Riley Big Red 1 is leadership. What would a employee at Fort Riley take away in leadership after they've been through your program there?
I'll just say, as a soldier, after they've gone through that service, the Army takes you, they send you to basic training, and then they send you to that advanced individual training. So that's where you learn whatever your job is going to be into the military. And then they send you to Fort Riley to the Big Red 1. And that's where you really figure out how do you become a soldier and how do you become an expert in your trade and work through that. And you're going to start that out probably as a young private first class. And then as you show increased expertise and leadership potential, we're going to promote you to specialist. And now you're a specialist in that field. You're starting to really master the things that you learned in that early advanced individual training. And then we're going to go into, hey, is this person ready to become a non-commissioned officer? And we make them what's called an E5, or they used to call them buck sergeants. But that is our first step into the non-commissioned officer corps. And you can do that in that 36, 48 month period. And that's where you walk away. And when that's on your resume, it's a pretty known quantity that if you made sergeant in the Army you can lead a group of 2 to 5 to maybe even 10 people on a task and keep them focused and move them forward.
Boy, it looks pretty good on a resume too when you're trying to find a job somewhere outside down the road. That sort of history is really invaluable to be able to make that happen. Someone wants to find out how to be involved or just wants to go visit the fort. I know you have several opportunities or things coming up where people can actually just visit the fort. I know there's security and all those other things. What's coming up and what can people do that are listening or viewing right now? Log in and say, hey, this is really a cool part of Kansas right here. How do they get there?
So I would tell you, come into what we call our Henry Gate off of exit 301, go to the visitor center and get a visitor pass. You can do it in person, or you can also get online and on our, just search Fort Riley Visitor Pass and it'll pop up and you can fill it out and get pre-approved to come on. But I would tell everybody, whether you're really interested in seeing what the Army's about, or if you are just curious what's behind our fences, come see it. It's the U.S. Army. It's America's Army. I am amazed at the number of people, even here in the Flint Hills, that are close to Fort Riley that have never been on base and never really seen what it looks like inside of here. I laugh. I say it's our little gated community. The problem is the people we're supposed to protect live on the outside, and they need to come see it and see where those soldiers are.
Well, that's amazing. You drive by the big hill, you see the big cannon up there. Does that still work?
No, I don't think Atomic Annie works anymore, but she does look good sitting up there.
It looks good up there. And I would encourage people as they're driving down I-70 to take that off, find out a way to jump in, get a visitor's pass, drive through the fort. There's some unique Kansas history as well on the fort.
There's a lot of Kansas history. So the first Capitol building for the territory is here on post. We also just recently reopened our museum on post. And so we talk about from when we really got started here, 1853, and a little bit before that. But then how does that change, Fort Riley change and grow through the Indian Wars, and then up to kind of the turn of the late 1800s. And then we transition into the First World War, and then where did the Big Red One go throughout World War II and beyond. And so it's a phenomenal facility. And again, anybody that's interested in that history can come on. That's in the museum. Then we've got buildings. So one of the things I joke about is our barracks. As the garrison commander, we're always working the infrastructure for that. And I say, my 1970s barracks give me a lot of trouble. My 1870s barracks, I don't have any problem. They're absolutely solid Kansas limestone, and they're never going anywhere. And so that history's there. We've got Custer's house. You can come see that, or come see the parade fields and see some of the old World War II equipment that we have sitting around. So lots of history across post, and anybody can come. As long as you get that visitor pass, you can come see all those things.
The visitor's pass, is that hard to get, or is it based on what you guys are doing? Getting online early is a good idea, but if you happen to be driving through, have an extra few hours and say, hey, we've driven by this like 100 times. Let's go and actually see this. Is that hard to get?
It's not. So if you are just driving through and say, hey, I just on a whim want to come see it, go to that Henry Visitor Center, Fort Riley Visitor Center at Henry Gate, right there off of exit 301. Come in, and all you have to do is show an ID. They'll log you in, do a quick background check. As long as you pass that background check, you are then able to go on post and see whatever you want to see.
Great. And Michael, you also have a website that people can go to and look around there as well. Tell us about that.
Right. So it's home.army.mil/Riley, and that'll take you to the Fort Riley home site on the official military Army page, and then kind of let you go through there and see some of that stuff. It'll have the history of the base, and then also some upcoming events that we have going on.
Hey, sounds great. Michael, thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedule. Thanks for taking care of all that stuff, because it sounds to me like it is an immense job, not only taking care of helicopters, but hospitals and all the terrain and area that you have out there. It's an immense job. So thanks for all you do. And you're 2 years in Kansas. I hope you stay for a while longer.
Well, thanks, Gary. So I will give up command in July, and we're trying to figure out what's next. But we're hoping it's close to Kansas for sure.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. Our guest today is Fort Riley Garrison Commander Colonel Michael Foote, and appreciate you for listening. Appreciate you for being a part of our program, Leadership in Challenging Times. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Our program's brought to you by Worth Wealth Management. I'm Gary Shorman.
Thanks for joining us for Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management. Join us right here next week for another episode with host Gary Shorman. Until then, remember to move forward ever, backward never.